my greetings to all my fellow speakers. But I specifically want to start by saying that I am so very pleased this morning to actually see some farmers, I'm assuming you're farmers, at this event. You know, as agencies and organizations that are involved in development, you know, we talk a lot about sustainability, changing practices, food security, climate change, but what does all that mean? At the end of the day, I really would like to see you guys sitting front and center, because without people that get up in the morning, go into their plots, actually know how to grow something, which I don't, can bring it to the markets, we'd all be starving. And when we talk about things like climate change, you know, yes, we study them in an academic setting, but I know that you would be very, very aware in a very practical way that the climate has changed, weather conditions have changed, and know in a very real way how that has affected your ability to grow food, to farm your land, and provide for your families. So people like yourselves are the center of these projects, and I think you would be interested to know that as development agencies, I've been on many events, conferences, that kind of thing, and the most interesting thing to most people that spend their lives either funding, studying, or managing this initiative is to hear from people like yourselves. Because if we don't have the participation of people who are actually involved, then we can talk all we want. You know, we can put as 200 million, how much money into our pot to change things, but it will remain the same. So I'd just like to start by saying thank you so much for your participation. Thank you for your presence. And thank you for what you're doing to keep Trinidad and Tobago on a sustainable path. I'd just really like to touch very briefly. I usually take the opportunity to tell people a little bit about the Multilateral Investment Fund, because we are a very low profile kind of organization in Trinidad and Tobago in particular. As John mentioned, we are part of the Inter-American Development Bank, and the IDB, as it's known, is a very large bank that primarily lends money to governments in the Latin American and Caribbean countries to engage in some fairly large projects, highways, schools, health, that kind of thing. The Multilateral Investment Fund was set up in parallel because we recognize that although it's great to do those big things, unless we can really engage with very small producers, business people, shopkeepers, people who have a little nails business, people who are actually engaged in business activity, as they say in the, you know, it's an overused word, but on the ground, the fundamental lives of people that we're trying to reach as citizens of our countries are not going to get better unless those producers and businesses prosper. So the fund was really set up to look at a series of projects that would support micro business, and I'm including farming as a micro business or a small business, and small and medium business enterprises in the region. And we've done a variety of things. 2 years ago, as the development community started relooking at what we're doing, we kind of refocused our efforts. And there are a couple of areas that are very, very important to us. And we have changed some of the areas that we program in to reflect that. One is we have recognized in our region that the livelihoods of small producers, and I don't mean small in any kind of derogatory way, people that work, have some acreage, producing a crop and selling it into markets. We have recognized that livelihoods of small producers is very, very key to food security, to us being able to feed ourselves as a nation and as a region. So a lot of our programming efforts in the future are going to be focused on how we can work with producers to really help them enjoy a better livelihood. And in that respect, we are looking at niche markets for specialized products. We're looking at things like how do we link farmers more directly into the markets that their produce eventually gets consumed by, so that they get better margins, more sustainable practices, certifications, exports, that kind of thing. The second area that we have recognized as very, very important is the issue of climate change, and particularly for the Caribbean. When we were, as an organization, we were reprofiling the areas that we wanted to focus in, climate change adaptation was not on the table. And it was the Caribbean countries, when we consulted with them, that identified this as a #1 concern. This climate change is bringing us a lot more drought and a lot more heavy rains. We have flooding, we have damage to our roads, we have crops being wiped out, and we have very small spaces in the Caribbean. So unlike, say, a country like, I don't know, even Guyana, or even if you go to Peru, where they do a lot of agriculture, they have a lot of land space, and it's not all crowded on the coast or scattered, concentrated on a hill. So our challenges are different, and although we've contributed the least to this phenomena of climate change, we're the most affected. So climate change adaptation is an area that we're very, very interested in for the Caribbean region. And the third area that we kind of want to focus on is this whole issue, like what we're doing today. We call it learning, communicating, and catalyzing. Although we are a large provider of grants to the region at about $100 million a year, we recognize that these are very small projects when we look at the types of problems that we're trying to tackle. So it's very, very important to us that when we do a project, that our partners help us to learn from those projects, that we can communicate what occurred, what went well, what didn't go so well, what we should do differently next time. And we use that information and learning to really try and engage other partners, other donors, other actors, more farmers, so that we get a bigger effect at the end of the day than just the direct beneficiaries and outcomes of the project. So having said that, we are very, very happy to be at this event today. We are anxiously looking forward to the presentation to understand the extent to which the project was able to achieve its objective in terms of farmers being able to adopt different practices that allow them to balance their needs to earn a living, the nation's needs to have food, the need of the country to preserve its environment and its watersheds and its eco-assets, as John has outlined, and the need to do farming in these hillsides because there's so much development pressures on the flat lands of the country. So we're looking really forward to seeing the extent to which we've been able to achieve the balance, and also the challenges that we may have experienced in getting there, and what we could do differently if we really wanted to take this effort bigger. I think that the project has some very strong success factors that have been alluded to by my predecessors, but I really want again to emphasize that participation and bringing together of all the actors to a goal is really, really key. And having worked in projects in Trinidad and Tobago for the last 8 years, I really want to commend the Cropper Foundation on their ability to have done that, because it's not something that we see very often. You know, in a small environment, this is my project and I'm doing this and this is about me, and sometimes we even forget about the beneficiaries. So I think that the Cropper Foundation has really been a very, very good partner for us in terms of being able to get a participation of ICA, CARDI, FAO, the ministry, the farmers, technical experts, the university, ourselves, bring everybody to the table so that we can participate in really finding solutions. And I had the honor to speak briefly with the founder of the Cropper Foundation, Angela Cropper, over the weekend at a wedding in Tobago. And Angela was looking out with me on a very lovely view of the bay, and we could see some fishermen and hills. And she said to me, she said, you know, at this stage in her career, she said she is now reconnecting again with the Caribbean, having stepped out and been in these international agencies. And she said her message to the people of Trinidad and Tobago is really that we live in a very rich environment, that we live in a very beautiful place that has provided us with the means of taking care of ourselves, with fresh water, with the ability to grow food, with sunshine, with coasts that provide us with fish and recreation and everything else. And yet, somehow, in our quest to develop and go faster and grow the economy and competitiveness, we forget about really cherishing those assets. And so that conversation kind of reinforced to me how important this project is, and how important it is, just to conclude with my opening remarks, to really engage the primary partners, the people that are there touching and feeling those environmental assets on a daily basis, and connecting them with people that can help them put what they do into a bigger context, and that they can in turn help us who look at the big picture to understand the realities of what happens on the ground in the small picture. So I'll just conclude with our motto, which is small, big pictures. We hope to make small investments to really come up with solutions that help us to understand and to affect the big picture to a great extent. So thank you, Cropper, thank you, farmers, thank you, partners, and Maurice, I'm really looking forward to further presentations.